Good evening. Thank you for joining us on the Amaruri TV show. I am your host, Sharon Mokhokhwane. Today on the show, we will be talking about the effects of divorce. In the beginning, God created man and saw that it was not good for him to be alone. So he created a suitable helper for him to be his companion. We see also in the days that we live in that a man gets to a point where he is lonely and he seeks a companion to share his life with. When a relationship begins, joy sets in and the couple usually endeavor to get married. Usually they spend the rest of their lives together, but it is not so for everyone. Differences may arise and people may end up getting divorced. I don't think that it is anyone's goal to get a divorce. Today on the show, we are going to talk about someone who was affected by the divorce of her parents. Here in studio with me today, I have a couple as our guests, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves.
Good evening. My name is Lerato Mosetli Molelo Atladi. I'm married to Galeboha Molelo Atladi. We have 3 children. I work in the medical field as a physiotherapist.
Thank you so much, Lerato, for coming to the show.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Galeboha Molelo Atladi, as already said by my wife. I'm an accountant by profession.
Thank you so much, Mr. Molelo Atladi. Thank you for coming to the show and sharing your lives with us. We also have with us our resident pastor and counselor. Welcome, Muruti.
Thank you very much.
I'm just going to ask you, Lerato, to start the conversation and just tell us about your childhood and your upbringing.
I was raised by 2 parents. My parents got married in July 1973, and in October I was born. So as soon as I was born, because my father needed to go to school, I was then sent to the village to go and be raised by my grandmother. So I was in the village until I was ready to now start nursery when I came to Gaborone. And my father finished school, and then I also started school in Gaborone, and I was raised by 2 parents.
Okay. Mr. Molelo Atladi, what was your childhood like?
I grew up in a rural setup. It was, I would say, more of a farm. At some point, I was a head boy, and then went to school up to primary, and then came to Gaborone to do my secondary and my university.
Okay, so in your home, were you raised by both your mom and your father, or your grandparents?
Yes, I was raised by my mother and father until late in the years when there was the disintegration, and then most of the time we were left with my mother.
Oh, okay. And Lerato, what differences did you experience when you moved from the village to coming now to stay with both your parents in Gaborone?
Okay. Because by the time I moved, I was about 5 years old and still a child. So in terms of, certainly being in Gaborone, you're in a town and things are different. You're going to private school. But what my parents always made sure happened was all holidays were spent with my grandmother. So, and then Hakeloko Haye, I was responsible for in the morning, milk the goats for the morning tea.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the environment between grandmother and now the parents, was it the same? Security-wise, comfort-wise?
In terms of, yes, I would say it was, because even my grandmother, she wasn't a single parent. My grandfather was alive, and in Gaborone, I was having both parents. And my grandmother, she provided well for us.
Okay. All right. Muruti, maybe looking at both their childhood, how did this shape them, and mold them for adulthood, or just the kind of people that they would become?
Yeah, I must say, from Lerato's side, what she has shared so far seems healthy. There doesn't seem to be something that is worrisome. It seems when her dad went to study, did he go abroad, somewhere far to study?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, she had to stay with a grandmother who was more like a mother to you. And also the grandfather was there. So the family setup still was okay because there was a mother figure and a father figure in the home. From the husband there, you can hear that he was also raised in a mother-father setup, but it seems there were some problems along the way. And so he ended up being more with the mother than the father. Usually those kind of setups, they do set us up somehow for some things that may not be desirable in our future families.
But Lerato, family-wise now, having both the mother and the father, what was your experience, in your family and the relationship between your parents? What did you observe? What was your view of their relationship?
In my preteen years, for me, everything was normal because that was the only family setup I knew. But I remember now, as I was starting to grow older, like I remember in my preteens, that's when I started paying more attention that my father was really there most of the week, and then most weekends he wasn't there. And one of the things I didn't enjoy doing then, and I still don't enjoy doing now, was washing the car. Because usually I'd have to wash his car Friday, and then it would disappear, come back either Sunday or Monday. So that's when I started picking her, maybe things are not quite what a family setup was. And sometimes I realized that the mother is sort of there cushioning the children, whereas my father, he drank quite a bit. He smoked more than quite a bit, and he, I was raised by both parents, but he wasn't always there.
Okay. We're going to pause right there, and after the break, we're going to continue about, you telling us about your teen years and what you observed in your families. Please stay with us. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to the show. We are talking about the effects of divorce. Lerato, before the break, you told us about being a teenager and now starting to realize that your father was away most of the weekends and that some things were not at ease. Can you tell us exactly what it is that you observed?
I think in retrospect, it possibly now started when I was in primary, because in primary now, I remember my parents had separated. It was then the kids was just me and my brother, and we had to move to White City. So I know what it's like because previously we had stayed in suburbia kind of places, and we stayed there for about 9 months, and the parents, my parents reconciled. So, and with my father not being there, it started to dawn on me, is this what a family setup was? But around the same time I was doing Form 2, preoccupied with my schoolwork and holidays. So as much as things were not quite, I didn't have time to dwell on it, because I grew up and some things it's none of your business, or it's not child's play or child issues. So I sort of got on with my life, but sort of sometimes picking when it's school report, usually my father doesn't come. It was mostly my mother, but the one thing that he always did, he'd make sure the school fees was paid.
But what led to the separation, what do you think? And being the firstborn child, didn't your mom sort of vent out everything onto you and maybe burden you with all of that?
No, I didn't feel burdened because I had my grandmother cushion, my maternal grandmother cushion. And when you are in your preteens, you have your own issues of self-discovery. So the issues that I was having with my mother were more related to my teens and not so much the relationship between her and my father. Because even sort of having issues, my own issues between me and my father, and sort of focus on your schoolwork.
So that worked for you?
Yes, and it worked for me.
Yes. And when did you get to meet Lerato? At what point in her life?
We've known each other for a very long time, because we are from to some extent related. So I've always known her, but not I would say much contact. I would say contact became when maybe she was doing her university abroad. That's when maybe to some extent there was that. But when she was also working, that's when we really now started coming together.
Oh, okay. So it was like much later on.
Yes.
In your life.
Mm.
Oh, all right. And then did you see anything amiss? Was she, someone, a friend or a child whom you could see whenever she would come back home to the village, that something could be wrong, in Gaborone, or she was just normal to you?
She was normal to me, but we had some differences in terms of how we looked at things, because I sensed that she was the type of a woman that if you rub her the wrong way, you will regret.
Mm.
But I kept on trying to,
befriend her.
Yeah, and also try to say to her, that's not how, you should interact with people. People should accept you. People should not be not knowing how they should treat you. They should be able to step on your toe and nothing should happen. So, but I would say that took a very long time.
Yes.
For her to slowly cool and then be the woman that she is today. But there's still some remnants left there.
Okay.
Was she just like a fighter, always ready to fight, kind of?
Yes.
And too urban, maybe?
Not really, because like she said, there was some form of, rural, so the urban life in her, and I wasn't seeing. I was just seeing her, she's a woman, who grew up in town, but has also the rural background. But that's what I'm saying. What was, I would say, affecting her, at some point I said to her, look, our backgrounds are more or less similar, but it's about how we cope. And there was a time when I used to say to her, she needs to be a survivor. There were some books of Viktor Frankl, she read, and other books. After reading them, she would say, yeah, these are quite, good. But I said to her, I don't expect you to change overnight. This is a process, and it is about you. I need not put you under pressure. Even me, I know I have undesirable, yes. So yeah, that's how it is. But we've I mean, she's accepted mine, which she most of the time accused me of, and I've accepted hers. But over I've seen her change. Yeah.
Okay. Murizi, can you just talk about their socialization, the rural-urban socialization, and also, her father maybe being, difficult sometimes, and maybe her pointing it out and then being told horo ungwana, but at the same time, going to these schools where they are taught to assert themselves. What can you say about her socialization?
Okay, I would say there's something that I picked in what she said about the fact that it is clear from her childhood that there were some issues in the family, her mother and her father. But for some reason, I think the parents dealt with it very wisely because it was not in their face. That's why she would have, discovered it quite late in her teens as she began to understand how people relate. And so I must say that I commend the parents in that regard. I think the other issues we can talk about them at a later stage.
We are going to continue about this riveting subject after the break. Welcome back to the Amariri TV show, where we are talking about the effects of divorce. Lerato, you spoke about the changes that you saw in your early teens. What happened later in your late teens?
As I went into my late teens, then between me and my father, there were more rifts in our relationship. I remember my father to put me in order. He bought a shamboko just for me. And being as strong-willed as I am, I decided, no shambok is going to touch my body.
And what exactly was he putting you in order for?
I think he felt I wasn't respecting him because as a teenage, the misdemeanor of a teenager, I really wasn't into that. And then with the shambok issue, we ended up, now the shambok has to descend on me. I don't remember exactly what happened. Then I ran away. I'd run away for 2 days. And in those 2 days, during the day, I would come by Kolaping just to come and check the coast. And at that time, I understood from the helper, my mother was very worried and she really wanted me to come home. And I did come home. And when I came home, a meeting was convened where at that meeting it was myself, both my parents, my grandmother, Bo Mamoholo, and 2 other adults. In my view, the meeting was convened to understand what is going on between me and my father. Why did I behave that way? And to my disappointment at the meeting, I was asked, where had you gone? And I had to explain for those 2 days where I was. And I did explain, in good faith. And then after that, each of the adults took a turn rebuking me. I was actually very upset about it.
So they had thought that, just gone.
I think it was more trying to contain the adult issues because by then my parents, they were really having issues in the marriage. And it was like, let's try and contain the child. And even
were you talking about those issues?
No, they were not. They weren't brought up. It was, this is how a child should behave. We do not expect that kind of behavior. But in terms of what happened, which is what I had hoped for, that was never brought to discussion. And I think part of it was like, let's not ruffle feathers. Let's just keep some issues at bay. And from that meeting, I vowed I will never allow myself to be in a position where a family meeting is convened and it's discussing my issues. Because in my mind, if that's how those meetings are held, clearly those meetings are not for me.
I'm sure you're quite intimidated with so many adults.
I wasn't intimidated. I was upset that I felt adults that are there to be neutral, but they all seem to be siding my father, even my grandmother, who had always been my greatest ally. And there was another incident where, my father was driving me to school. I was doing A-levels in South Africa. It was like, okay, I'm going to educate you. After I finish Form 5, and now you're going to do A-levels in South Africa, so you don't have 7 months waiting to go for TS. Well, now you're going to do A-levels. After A-levels, then you can go and do your TS. So while my father was driving me to school in South Africa, he was driving so fast. I was convinced he was trying to kill me, not us, just kill me. I was so scared, I actually ended up in the headmaster's office writing a letter and saying I don't feel safe in my father's company.
Writing a letter addressed to?
To the headmaster.
Okay.
And then, since I was in boarding school, it was only my mother and Ramholo and Mamholo who were allowed to take me out of the school premises. And then, because what I was feeling, definitely the rife between my parents, had really grown. And I felt I was just caught up in the whirlwind and I couldn't understand why and how. And I almost failed my A-levels, at least by my standards. And then when I actually went to tertiary, I then made another decision, I think I'm smart. So I need to now prove myself, and I really excelled. And then I went on with my life, finished, and then now when I got back, I started having fainting spells.
Okay. Now maybe, looking at your late teens and what was going on, Muruti is talking now about fainting spells. What could have led to that?
Yeah, I think just going a little bit back to what she was saying about what was happening in the family with her father. Already you can see there that there are some issues. You see, she says she was convinced the father was trying to kill her by the way he was driving. The question is, was the driving that bad? Or because she already had issues in her mind, she saw it that bad. You see, because the issues of the mind are very interesting. She's convinced that he's trying to kill her, but they're both in the car. So sometimes when there are certain things that are going on, probably subconsciously she had observed something that was unhealthy in the family, whatever it is that the father was doing. There was mistrust that started developing. And I also don't hear clearly what it is that she was actually doing that caused the father to bring the Shambok out, to want to discipline her. And my suspicion from a counseling point of view is probably there was this rebellion that was building up inside of her, because she felt that a father who was supposed to protect the family and protect her was failing her. And so there was it's almost like a volcano that is busy,
building
up inside and waiting for a time to explode. Yeah. And so when there are things like that happening inside of you, your view of things tends to be distorted. Yeah, so the driving may not have been as bad, but because already she had trust issues, she thought that it was that bad. Now, going to the fainting spells, it is that volcano now when the pressure has built up so much.
So long, yeah.
For so long that now she crashes somewhere along the way.
A lot of resentment. I think you just resented him a lot. And also, now that I remember when I turned 21, I made a decision to disown my father. And in the process, because, when you are young, you are obedient towards your parents. So when I turned 21, I told my mother that you are no longer going to make me talk to my father. If I have something to say, I will tell him myself. And then I called Bo Mamaholo and told them the same thing. And at that point, I decided I want to have absolutely nothing to have with my father. And that continued for 10 years. And I think it stopped, or at least those emotions sort of softened because of an incident that happened with my brother.
We're going to continue hearing about this and where the disowning ended after the break. Welcome back to the Amaruru TV show. We are talking about the effects of divorce. Before we went on the break, Lerato, you spoke about how you had disowned your dad. Murizi, how does a child come to that point when they want to disown their own parent?
Yeah, I think when children see a lot of wrong that is done, you see, parents are people that are supposed to have the first authority in our lives. And so we expect a lot. Children tend to brag about their parents, especially their dad. My dad is the strongest. My dad can beat your dad. My dad this, my dad that. You know, there is something about a father figure that a child wants to be proud of. And so when fathers fail the children by doing things that children do not expect, instead of that love and admiration, the resentment tends to set in. I mean, you must think about it. Children want to have their fathers as part of their life. So for a child to turn around and say, I disown my father or my parent, some real damage must have happened that is inside. And I think in her case, it seems like a lot of damage was happening as she was growing up. The parents, yes, the elderly people were trying to cushion it, but it seems like it was just going on, and the pressure was building, and that is why at this point she will want to disown her parent, which is totally different, which is unnatural, I must say.
Where did you end up with that, Lerato? How far did you stay without communicating with your dad, and what brought you together again?
I managed to disown him completely for 10 years. Until my brother had an emotional meltdown. It was my brother immediately after me. So I'm extremely overprotective over him. So I took it upon myself to seek help for him, only for my father to be called to the meeting. And then this meeting, it wasn't a family meeting, it was a social worker at Red Cross. And then that sort of started breaking, I don't know what to say, melting the ice just a little bit.
What caused him to get to emotional breakdown, your brother?
I think because he was the one who would take most of the I would say the beatings from the divorce, because I was very clear there are certain things that I would refuse to do. Because he's such a peacemaker, it was easy for him to take on so much. I think he just exploded where it got to a point where it was too much for him.
Okay, when did the divorce actually take place?
I think my parents divorced when I went for TS. I went for Tirola's Chava in 1993.
Mm-hmm. And that's when it actually happened? Oh, okay. And from then on, how did you then move on in life? What happened?
Fortunately for me, I went for TS. After TS, then I had that break 7 months where I was getting ready to go to school, and then I went and studied in the US for 6 years.
Okay. So it felt like the effects did not really hit you because you were able to sort of escape it at the time of its occurrence?
Yes.
Okay. In your marriage, Gelebocha, did you see anything in Lerato, that showed that, she was having a negative effect from the divorce?
I never related it to the divorce, but she would be like, I would say, have some anger towards me. which I tried to manage, but I think it came to a point whereby, she was able to now say she also needs to manage it. But it was not, I would say, easy for me to really know how to deal with her, because at times I would have to, I would say, try and avoid her to get into that state of anger, so that I'm not in the receiving end. So I would be like a compliant husband. But and also I think the other thing is you'd also want things to work, and between me and her, things to work, well, and we should be, a good example. And I think where we are, like if I look in retrospect, I'm regarded, I would say, as a role model in many respects, at work, at home, and even her, because whatever she does, especially her work, she does it, I would say, with the full heart, So people, I would say, look up to her. And I normally say, plow back, to people so that they can learn from you. So I think that is what maybe kept us going. And then the effects, we did not feel, that much.
Okay. In retrospect now, how do you explain your anger towards him, maybe early in your marriage? Was it misdirected?
I think it totally was. It wasn't until recently when I was having a conversation with Moruti, and he said to me, Lerato, the way you keep pushing Kialoboha, do you realize that one day he's just going to say, I have had it, and walk away? And for me, that was a wake-up call, because when I then reflected, I realized that I had channeled a lot of my anger towards him. And for example, when he does something that I don't like, I'm quite strong in how I feel. I tell him, don't do that, I don't like it. And usually his response would be, but when you do it, I keep quiet. And I'd say, no, but why should you keep quiet? And then when I reflect and then look at it differently, then it was actually very painful for me to realize that I'd actually pushed him in such a corner that I made him defenseless. And how can I love someone so much and then reduce them to that? And something which he used to say, which now it really embarrasses me. There was the time where he said, I wish I had your skill. And I said, which skill is that? Our skill is our child. And then I was like, so I've actually reduced my husband so much that he wants to have that skill of mine so that he can give it back to me. It was a very painful thing to be aware of. How can I claim so much yet hate the very person I love so much?
We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to the show. We are talking about now your Muruti, their setup, their personalities. Can you maybe just analyze that for us?
Yeah, I think when you look at her, and what she was doing unaware, and you look at what the husband was taking, it seems the husband had decided that, you know what, this is my wife, I'm going to support her, and I'm going to take in whatever it is, or pain or suffering. It almost reminds me of what Jesus did for the church. You know, he suffered for the church, he was crucified for the church, he was suffering more for the one he loved. Yes. And I think that's what kept the marriage going the longest time. And because he was compliant according to his word, she didn't see exactly what she was doing. And for me, as somebody who was talking to her, I kept on hearing what she was doing, who she was, and that is why I said to her that, you know, one day, because I know in cases like that, somebody can keep things inside for a longer time, and at some place then they will get tired because they have carried so much for so long. And so I think it was in his character that he's able to absorb a lot more, probably because of his love for her, but also probably because he's a peacemaker. Naturally, he's not a fighter. If it was another man,
no, this was a good setup. The word of God says, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and we see that this has brought peace. So, how did you then realize that you need to get help and start getting the help, Lerato?
I was actually very privileged to have Moruti as my patient. So while I was there treating him, you know, we'd be chatting, and then because I understand the concept of counseling, what it does, because he kept trying to prompt me to go for counseling, and I kept saying, no, you want me to go and relive my old hurts, and then you're going to expose me, I'm going to be vulnerable. Do you know what it's like to be vulnerable? I've been there. I don't want to go there again. So, but, and also at the same time, my father wasn't well. So as he was talking to me, I actually felt myself warming up towards my father, you know, being the way a daughter should be towards his father. And, you know, and then eventually he said, Nare, wahubukaling session. and that really prompted me to seek the help that I need to forgive my father and to be at peace with my father. But it wasn't an easy decision to come to.
Yes. So whilst you were giving him therapy, you're also getting therapy at the same time.
Yes, and for the price of one.
Yeah, I must maybe come in there to say, when I met Lerato, she was a very fortified city in many ways. She had built walls around herself. She had come to a place where she knew that she was hurt and she had to protect herself. So she had a very certain way in which she did things, and she wasn't ready to go back to her old wounds, because that will, you know, the security that she had found in the walls that she had built will crumble. So I think by God's grace, slowly but surely, I kept on poking the wall so that she realizes that this wall is actually very dangerous. She wouldn't have seen what she was doing to her husband if the wall remained, because it was her defense mechanism. Many times when there are some things that are painful, we want to protect ourselves from more pain. But the same wall that we are building to protect ourselves from more pain is the same wall actually that stops true love from flowing in. And so it is extremely unhealthy. That's why people like that can break down somewhere along their line.
Yes, like she spoke of the fainting spells.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And were you aware, that, you know, your wife has started getting help? Did you see any changes? Was she open to you about it?
Yes, she was open, but I wouldn't say that much, because I think because it was taking place under patient therapy relationship, so she wasn't divulging much, but only to say, no, there's Muruti Mokwane, he counsels. I think I need to enroll for counseling. He's saying that counseling can assist. But even me, I was trying to get from her, how will it assist? but I wasn't getting, that much until she, attended it. And then I could see now she's not necessarily a different person, but how she approaches things, it's much, different. I think she's more now, self-aware of, her actions. What are the consequences if she does that? Unlike in the past where she would just jump at you without really saying what will be the consequences. So I think to a large extent it has helped her discover, herself.
Yes. And how was it for you? Sometimes there's a pride factor in us where, you now had to come to him and maybe apologize, change some of your ways. Did you find that pride stood in the way of you as you moved on in life?
As I was starting to deal with my issues, I started realizing that it's very difficult for me to receive a compliment. When someone gives me a compliment, I feel I'm unworthy of it. And then I found it very difficult to say I'm sorry. Muruti had to teach me to say I'm sorry and mean it. So saying I'm sorry was very difficult because sometimes he would say, did you say I'm sorry to the children for what you did? And I'll be like, I'm sorry to the children for what? So it wasn't easy for me to, to be, for lack of a better word, to be more subservient.
Yeah. It's amazing how, your parents had treated you with that baholo attitude, but now you are also sort of reciprocating it to your children. We are going to come back after the show and find out more about Lerato's healing process and her restoration. Welcome back to the show. We are almost coming to the end of our show, of this episode. Lerato, you spoke about, how your dad was not well when you started to get help. How did then your relationship with him end up? Were you able to reconcile?
I was able to reconcile with my father, and unfortunately he left us. But when he left us, I was actually at peace. Because there was a time I actually told him, I am your daughter, you are my father. So as your daughter, I'm going to do what a daughter needs to do for her father. Because then even after he died, I acknowledged he had his own issues, he had his life, but that didn't change the fact that he was my father. I was his daughter and I had certain responsibility towards wrapping up of his estates and of his, his affairs.
Yes, especially being the firstborn child.
Yes.
Yes. So the healing process came just at the right time for you.
It couldn't have come at a better time, because I think it brings a lot of joy and peace to know to forgive someone whilst they're still alive, because then there wasn't the what if, maybe if I had. And I've come to appreciate forgiveness. It's a choice, it's a decision, and when you forgive and you completely let go, it does give you peace that surpasses all understanding.
Yes. What do you say to our viewers, who find themselves maybe in your position, where they have a hurting partner and, the patience that is needed?
Yes, I think one has to be patient with the partner. He has to understand what the partner is going through. You need to also try to really put yourself in that person's shoes so that you can understand what they are going through. And all the time try to be, supportive so that your partner can also cope with the situation. And at the end, what we want is for the partner to win, not to lose. Yeah.
And how did, your relationship with your father-in-law, did it blossom more, after she had reconciled with him?
No, I think for me, the relationship had always been good. Her relationship with the father did not
affect
your
relationship with him.
My relationship with her father. So
he was a real peacemaker.
He was a real peacemaker, yes. Yeah. So her issues didn't become your issues.
No, I think her father knew that I was like maybe a supporting pillar, to her, So I think that's what, because I think, like she said, at times I'll be the one that will be interacting with, her father.
More than her.
Yes, I mean during that time.
Okay. Muruti, just looking at their story and, what they've gone through, how would you encourage our viewers concerning this matter?
Yeah, I would say to our viewers, it's very, very important that we understand that we are broken. We live in a world that is not perfect. There are some bad things that has happened, and not only to us, but even to our parents. And sometimes our parents' brokenness actually will affect us. And many are times for us to be able to cope, to understand. Of course, as children, you expect a lot from your parents. You expect them to understand, to have everything perfect. But their brokenness can affect you in a negative way. And if you understand that they are probably also broken, they have issues that they have to deal with, then you can extend compassion towards them. Yes, you may have felt like a victim, but the truth of the matter is that hurt people tend to hurt others. And so the fact that your parent may have hurt you, somebody that you respected, is probably because they were hurt themselves. And so when we understand that, it becomes easier for us to forgive. And when we do forgive, truly, some walls, like in her case, begin to fall. And when those walls begin to fall, the selfishness that we normally have as human beings begin to fall. And when that selfishness falls, we begin to see other people also that, as much as I need love and people to understand me, I also need to love the other people and for them to understand, for me to understand them. And so I would say, the world is bigger than just ourselves. It cannot be just about me, myself, and I. Sometimes we need to look at the broader picture and say, what may have happened? What could I have done? Of course, family is supposed to give us a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, and a sense of security. So when we don't find that in a family setup where a mother and a father who are supposed to love each other are not able to bring that about, it will affect us. Like in her case, it did affect, the way she viewed things. And so these are some of the things that are very critical. Children tend to blame themselves because some of the fights that the parents will be fighting about will be about children. You didn't do this for the child, or that child did that. Why did you do that for the child? So many times, children tend to blame themselves. Remember I said that children see their parents as heroes. They think they are perfect. And so when there are these disappointments and stuff, they tend to blame themselves and they tend to be really, really broken. In today's talk show, it was very clear from Lerato's case that what happened to her parents carried on into her early stages of life as a young adult, as a teenager, and it carried on into her marriage. And that she had built walls that were so thick, so very hard, even for her to see herself. So children are really, really affected in a big way when parents are not in good terms. And divorce, remember, the Bible says the two shall become one. So when these two who are supposed to be one break apart, you can just imagine when you have super glue that has glued two people together and they break apart. They leave pieces of each other on each other, and it's a painful thing. It breaks you. You have opened yourself to this person. Now they know all of your secrets, and now they are your enemies. It can really be hard.
Thank you to our guests and to you, Muruti, as well. You have been watching the Amaruri TV show, where we talked about the effects of divorce. We have realized that it does not only affect the couple, but it also affects the children even more painfully. So may we seek help from the originator of marriage and realize the bond and the covenant of marriage and make sure that we all honor it. You have been watching the Amaruri TV show. Please join us next time. Goodbye.
Amaruri, Amaru.